Atul sir is on the campus, I think. Or
I am on campus, that's right.
yes.
Which part of the world are you, Prachi?
I am in Pune.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yes.
We're live on YouTube, sir, so we may formally start.
Wonderful. Let's start, and really looking forward to hearing you, Prachi.
Thank you so much.
Poonam, over to you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 52nd episode of the most prestigious Yogananda Guru series. We have with us today Prachi Shevgaonkar, who's from Pune, and Prachi does some amazing work, and she's going to tell you all about it. But before I ask Prachi to speak and tell you all the amazing work that she does, I would like our Vice Chancellor, Professor Atul Khosla, to welcome Prachi and also speak a few lines about our Yogananda Guru series. Over to you, Atul sir.
Thank you, Poonam, and good evening, everyone. It's a wonderful, I would say, exciting experience to be here today with Prachi. I'm really looking forward to hearing you, Prachi, but let me step back probably 10 years ago, right, Poonam? So we started a series of lectures called the Guru series, or the Yogananda Guru series of lectures. The whole idea was to bring in debate into Shilini. The whole idea was to bring in new ideas into Shilini. The whole idea was to bring in inspiration into Shilini. We believe that inspiration is what we need to become a great nation. And our role as a university is to bring inspiration to our students. And students who get inspiration will do wonders, just like you are doing, Prachi. So that's the objective, and that's been the objective of the Guru series. So when COVID hit us, Poonam and I and others came together and said, let's start doing one lecture a day. And we ended up doing some very exciting discussions. We got some amazing speakers to the Yogananda Guru series. We had Yuvraj Singh, Harbhajan Singh, Anupam Kher, Dia Mirza. These are celebrities. We had a few Nobel Prize winners. We had academicians, we had writers, we had businessmen, we had spiritual leaders. All of them come and share their thoughts and share ideas. Again, with a very simple belief that sharing ideas can create knowledge, and knowledge is what we need to build a great nation, and also to, I would say, take our minds to new dimensions. So it's not about science, it's not about skills, it's about inspiration. And that's what the Guru series is all about. So we are really, really looking forward to hear from you, Prachi. We know it's been a very inspiring journey for you. You've done some amazing work at a very young age, and congratulations for that. And for all the participants, Prachi has done some amazing work, and that work started from a small idea. So let's hear what that idea was. Let's hear from Prachi how she went about doing it. And let's hear how a small idea can actually become a revolution, and how all of us can actually try to emulate what Prachi has done. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Poonam to formally welcome Prachi Shevgaonkar to us and get into this very special discussion and very special Yogananda Guru series. Poonam, over to you.
Thank you, Atul. Actually, I must tell you that it was by sheer accident that I found Prachi, because our Colonel Gill had shared a video about her. And, I watched your video a couple of times, and thankfully you had left your phone number at the end of it. So I reached out to Prachi a couple of times, and she missed my messages. So after about a week or so, I gave up. And then suddenly after a month, and she said, "Oh, Poonam, ma'am, I'm so sorry I missed your messages." And then we got talking, and I also downloaded your app, but I haven't worked on it yet, because I thought I'll first check with you how to go about it. So Cool the Globe is what Prachi will tell us about. It's an app which she and her father together apparently worked on, and did a lot of live experimenting before they put this together. So thank you, Prachi, for being here. And let me tell you that with this Guru series, we are looking at people who made an impact on the society, giving back to the community. So you are the first one, and I will keep inviting you for the rest of the Guru series also. So thank you for being our gracious guest today, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Poonam ma'am, for inviting me here. Thank you so much, Atul sir, for your very kind and very inspiring words. We actually need more universities like you, with more professors like both of you who truly know how to inspire the students. Before coming here, I saw the pictures of Shulini University on Google, and it was absolutely breathtaking. So if I had such a beautiful campus to go to, I would not have ever missed a single lecture. So I'm really looking forward to coming there in person as well.
Say, Poonam, but things change when you become a student, because if you're bunking classes, then why would you ever be a student?
Right, of course. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very, very excited to talk to all the students and everybody who's listening to this. I've just made a small presentation for all of you, and I'll share that very quickly. Can you see that, Poonam ma'am?
Yes, we can see.
Yes. So let's talk about climate change and not make it boring. I say it at the onset only because my first memories of climate change were hearing about it in school, when we used to have lectures on environment. And every time there was a lecture like this, I used to think, not another boring lecture again. And I used to feel very sleepy. And now that we've grown up, we are a lot more polite. We don't say it to anybody's face, but every time we hear that there's going to be a lecture about environment, we do think it's going to be boring. In order to not make it boring, we are only going to talk about two things today. Even before we get into Cool the Globe, we are going to talk about two questions that helped me get started on this journey. And these are two very simple questions. And by the end of our interaction today, I hope that all of you find your own versions of your answers to them. So when now, not your age, but even a little younger than that, many, many years ago now, I had a very big decision in front of me, like all of us do, when we are just starting to get into a university. And the question was, which field am I going to choose? Which profession am I going to select? And that was an especially pertinent question for me because I come from a family full of engineers and I didn't really have many options. So I did have to do a lot of thinking to figure out what is going to be my career of choice. And while doing that, one of the first things I looked up was, how many hours do each of us spend in our professional lives, in our entire lifetimes? Does anybody have any guesses? How many hours do we spend in our careers? Poonam ma'am can answer as well.
I just said countless.
Oh, okay. I think you're on. Oh, countless. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I would love to see some answers in the chat as well. A lot. Yes. Yes, the answer is very close to this. Each one of us spends about 80,000 hours at work in our lifetimes. And that's a very big time period, right? It takes about 10,000 hours for one to become an expert at something. And so when I saw that figure, I thought, if each one of us spends even a fraction of our professional careers into solving the real challenges around us, then all of us would become an expert in making the world around us a better place, like Poonam ma'am also mentioned when she was in her introduction. So this professional time span we have is really a gift in front of us, and we can use it in such a positive way. And when I figured that out, so when I did eventually decide to become a media professional, I was very sure that I wanted to use at least a fraction of my skill sets in solving something around me. And that's how I remember in my first semester of college, I Googled a simple question, which was, what is the biggest challenge in the world today? What is the biggest problem in the world today? And that's when climate change popped up. I was very surprised to see that, because while all of these big institutions, these countries, everybody seemed to be saying that climate change is one of the most pressing issues in front of us, but nobody around me was really talking about it. And so I asked myself two very simple questions about climate change, and the answers to those questions is what led my journey. And I would love for all of you to ask those questions to yourself as well. So the first question that I asked myself was, why should I care about climate change? And I think that's a very valid question. Why should we care? And as I started trying to figure out the answer to this question, the natural second question that emerges is, what even is climate change? And I would love for some of you to try and answer this question in the chat box or in person. But what I saw was that climate change was just 1 degree Celsius at the time. There was a 1 degree Celsius rise in Earth's temperature compared to the pre-industrial times. And that was leading to all sorts of crazy things happening to us. So when I talk to people in school, I always give them an example of their phones. When our phones heat up and they start acting all weird and crazy, that's what's happening to our planet, I tell them. So 1 degree Celsius doesn't seem like a lot, to be honest. There's an average increase of 1 degree Celsius in the Earth's temperature. And in some areas it's more, in some areas it's less. But some of the warmest years on record have happened in the past 20 years. So who are the villains in this story? What is this happening because of? Is these guys, the greenhouse gases. I want you to remember their names very clearly, because these are the guys who are trapping the sun's heat into the Earth's atmosphere, and that's leading to climate change. So we all know carbon dioxide. There are fluorinated gases, there's nitrous oxide, there's methane. And all of these guys together, they are the villains of this story. And as you can see, carbon dioxide is the ringleader. But I think they're not the real villains. I think they're actually being framed. I think somebody else is pulling the trigger. Somebody else is the real villain in the story. So does anybody have any guesses? Who is the real villain of climate change? Sake says it's human beings. Yes, absolutely right. It's us. We are the real villains. Greenhouse gases are actually the good guys. It's because of them that civilizations can thrive and plants and trees can grow. If greenhouse gases weren't there, the earth would be too cold and we wouldn't even exist. So what's the problem? If your grandmother is anything like mine, she would tell you that too much of anything is bad. And that's essentially what's happening. 280 parts per million, as you can see in the graph, is how much carbon dioxide the earth needs. And that's how much carbon dioxide the earth had in 1750s. And then the industrial revolution happened. And now we have almost twice the amount. We have just today I checked, and we have 416 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere today. And as humans, essentially, we build things, we grow things, we travel to places, we buy things. And in doing all of that, we emit greenhouse gases. And because of that, the level of CO2 in the atmosphere is the current highest in the last 14 million years. And it's doing all sorts of crazy things to our planet. So what are the effects of climate change? So when I tried to do some basic research on that many years ago, this is what popped up. These are the biggest effects of climate change. Extreme weather events are happening more frequently and more intensely. Flooding, wildfires, storms, droughts. If you have been reading the newspaper in the past couple of years, you know that it's bad. Wildfires are happening around the world. Floods right now are happening around the world in Canada, Germany. Just this monsoon season, we've seen 2 cyclones. Sea level rise, so they say that Mumbai might go underwater someday. Changes in rain patterns, so Indian monsoon is going to be very deeply affected by climate change. Retreat of glaciers, Loss of biodiversity, we've read chapters and chapters on this at school. Um, and having read this now, having heard about this, I want to ask you again, I want to ask you the answer to your first question. Do you now care about climate change? Do you think that after hearing about all of this, you care about climate change? Yes, Saket again is saying yes. Vipul is saying yes. I would love to hear from some more of you. Vishakha, yes. Yes, a lot of people are saying yes. Pooja is saying yes. And it's so nice of all of you. You are so well aware about issues. And it's nice to hear you saying yes. But honestly, when many years ago, when I asked myself this question, I had a moment of honesty with myself. And I thought, while these things sound very scary and very bad, I don't honestly care about this enough to actually do anything about it. And in my defense, I was in college. I had a lot on my going on my plate. I had a limited threshold of things I could give my attention to. And at the time, I thought polar ice melting in some other corner of the world is not going to be one of them. And so I asked myself, if I don't care about these things, what it is that I do care about? And that's something I want to ask you again. Forget about climate change, forget about the environment, forget about the big world things. What are some things that you care about in your day-to-day life? What are some very simple things that you truly, really care about? What do you care the most about? And I would love to see some answers in the chat box. Oh, somebody cares about being happy. Wow, that's a nice answer. Yes, I must say I agree. Does anybody else have any answers? What do you care the most about? Peace and happiness, Nanda ma'am. Wow. Well-being of my family and friends, Priyadarshini. Family, I'm hearing a lot. I'm seeing a lot of family. So yes, I asked this question not only to myself, but to many other people around me, and the answers were always similar. I realized that as ordinary people, we care about very simple things. We care about our health, we care about our food, we care about our homes, we care about our livelihoods. And lastly, we care about our family and the people around us. And so does this have anything to do these things have anything to do with climate change? At the time I thought not, but as a media professional I had an opportunity to meet many people from different walks of life, and they taught me more about climate change than any of these reports ever could have. And so forget about these impacts, these big heavy words. I want to talk to you about the individual voices behind these catastrophic impacts of climate change that we hear about. So one of the first people I want to tell you about is this 12-year-old boy I met when I was doing a film on the dreams of children, what their dreams look like and what are their aspirations. And I met him in a slum not very far from my house. The day I met him, I asked him a very simple question. I asked him, if you could ask for anything in the world, you could have one wish and it would come true, what would you ask for? I will never forget his answer, because he said, I would wish that my house doesn't get filled with water every year. A 12-year-old boy gets to ask for anything in the world, and this is what he has to ask for. I realize that he's not alone. As extreme weather events happen more frequently and more intensely, more and more roughly built slums would be flooded with water, more and more slums will have to face the wrath of weather extremities, and there'll be more young boys like him who have to worry about something as basic as a shelter above his head. I realized that this is something that I do care about. The second person I want to tell you about is this extremely bright young girl I met when I was volunteering for an NGO that worked in women's education. And the time I met her, my city, Pune city, was seeing a drought, and the Khadakwasla Dam near my city had dried up. So water was being used scarcely throughout the city. When I met her, I asked her, which standard are you in? She said, I don't go to school anymore. Why is that? It was because her house got water only for 2 hours in the afternoon, and nobody else in the home could afford to stay at home during that time. So this girl, she had to skip school and stay at home to fill buckets with water. I realized that she's not alone. Climate change impacts our water. Climate change means that more and more homes become unstable, and extremely bright young girls like her have to skip education, stay at home so they could fill buckets with water. And I realized that this is something that I do care about. The third person I want to talk to you about is one of the most inspiring young women I've ever met. Um, and I met her when she was around the same age as me. She was 19, but she was already married and she had a small daughter at hand. She was a climate refugee from Bangladesh, and I met her in a community of displaced waste workers in Bangalore. The day I met her, I walked 5 kilometers with her to the nearest school, where she demanded that her daughter be admitted, enrolled into the school. But they couldn't enroll the daughter because she didn't know the mother tongue, Kannada. Neither did she have the necessary documents. But this woman, she didn't give up. For the next 2 months, every single day, she walked those 5 kilometers to the school. She sat at the doorstep and she demanded that her daughter be enrolled into the school. And finally, the school found a way around the technicalities, around the language barriers, and her daughter got a place in the classroom. Now, what does this have to do with climate change? Let's talk about the millions of climate refugees, more than 10 million every year and counting, who have to flee from their homes, from countries like Bangladesh, because of weather extremities, and start their lives from scratch in a completely new environment with children in hand. Now her story had a very happy ending, but there are many other stories who don't. And I realized that this is something that I do care about. Another incident was one that happened not very far from my home. A few years ago, it rained extremely heavily. It rained like I had never seen before. And throughout the night, I was sitting very safely in the four walls of my home. But even then, I was scared. Little did I know that the Nala near my house had flooded that night, and many people lost their homes. The next morning, I went for a walk to see what had happened, to see the aftermath. And I saw dead cattle lying on top of a car. And next to it was this old couple trying to retrieve their only source of livelihood, their vegetable cart, which was now completely destroyed in the storm before. I realized that climate change is not just about the news I read in newspapers. It's not about the reports of flooding and um, uh, reports of extreme weather events. Climate change impacts our livelihoods, and for many people, for millions of people in India, it impacts their ability to fend for their families. And I realized this is something that I do care about. So once I realized, once I saw all of these stories, once I met all of these people, I realized that climate change is not about these big, heavy words. It's about people. It's about the very core things we care about. It impacts our food. It impacts our water. It impacts our livelihood. It impacts our peace, prosperity, and happiness. And only when I realized that, I finally understood that I do care about climate change. And when I understood that I do care about climate change, only then did I ask myself the second question: what can I do about climate change? So now I'm going to take you through the second part of my journey. My first part of starting Cool the Globe began even before I started working on Cool the Globe. When people ask me what was your most challenging part, I said this was the most challenging part. Uh, just figuring out why I should even care about it. And once I had decided that I do care about climate change, the second part was the easy one. So I'm going to take you through how my journey actually started, and my own journey of figuring out the answer to this question: what can I do about climate change? So one of the first counter questions I asked myself was, why now? Why is it important to do something about climate change now? Um, and for that, I want you to imagine a bathtub, and a bathtub with a tap open. And no matter, even if we reduce the volume of that tap, someday or the other, the bathtub is going to overflow. And climate change is at a very similar juncture right now, where our bathtub, the bathtub of Earth, is going to overflow in the next 30 years. We have only 3 decades to avoid the worst effects of climate change. And how we act now is going to determine the future of not only our own life, but the future of many, many more generations to come as well. So, what are the global goals to do something about climate change? The universal goal that all countries together are working on is to become carbon neutral by 2050, to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And we have to do that in order to limit the global warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius. So these are the global targets we must absolutely work towards reaching, because if not, then we would be unsuccessful at avoiding the worst effects of climate change, and our planet can never be the same again. So very often when I'm talking in schools, when I'm talking to children, we talk about mistakes that cannot be undone. And most mistakes in life, you can always take them back, you can always correct them later on. But climate change could very well become something that we cannot come back from. And so I want you all to remember these global goals, because they are not only the goals of countries and politicians and corporations, they are our targets. These are the goals that we must also join and work towards achieving. So how is the world doing to achieve these goals? As you can see in this graph, there are two scenarios given. One is a sustainable development scenario, the one in blue, which shows where we want to reach. We want to reach towards net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And the scenario in red looks a lot like the worst case scenario in front of us. If I would have had to guess, I would have guessed that this is what happens if we don't do anything. But that's not really true. The red line is what happens if countries and politicians and corporations do what they have agreed to do according to global treaties. So if countries actually manage to do what they have agreed to do to limit climate change, this is where we reach the line in red. And as you can see, that's nearly not enough. If we follow that, then we actually end up increasing our greenhouse gas emissions by a bit. So there's something missing in the picture. And what's that? It's people. If you look at the biggest transformations that have happened throughout history, they have been carried out not by governments, not by policymakers, not by legislators, but the biggest transformations have taken place when people have come together to take actions. When I was in school and I used to look at my history books, I used to go through all of these very exciting events that happened. You know, our war on independence. You would have wars. You would have transformations taking place. You would have literary feeds. So many things were happening in our history books, and I used to always think, I wish I was born in that time, because so much was happening at that time. I used to always think what we are born in are very boring times. You can't do much. But when I started working on climate action, I realized that as much as it's a responsibility, it's also an opportunity, because we find ourselves in the cusp of our youth, in probably some of the most defining decades of human existence. And it's a power that we have. It's a power to make a big difference. It means that how we act today is going to determine the future of our planet, and how many generations have had the power to make such a big impact. And that's why we take action. So now I'll tell you a story of my action. When I went through all of that, this whole process that I've just taken you took many months for me, but I still couldn't figure out what can I, an ordinary girl, do about a big challenge like climate change. And so I did what any girl faced with a problem would do. I went to my parents and I asked them, what do you think I can do about climate change? And we decided that as a family, we would reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions by 10% to start with. And so that's what we started doing. We started researching on different ways that we could reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. I started looking at which actions that I was taking in my day-to-day life was leading to the most greenhouse gas emissions. How could I measure my avoided emissions? And as we started doing that, two very strange things happened. The first was that I actually started to really enjoy it. It became almost like a fun game that I was playing with my family. From the feeling of hopelessness that I was feeling when I was just reading about climate change, it was replaced by hopefulness when I started taking small actions in my day-to-day life. The second strange thing that happened was that so many of my friends, my family, came to me and said that it looks like you're doing something interesting and we want to join in. And till that moment, I had only heard that people don't really want to do anything about climate change. But when I started taking actions, I realized that my small actions could inspire so many of my friends to do the same. And that's when I started thinking whether there could be a platform which would help me bring global citizens on this quest that I have taken on. And that's how Cool the Globe was born. So with Cool the Globe, we built an app which would help individuals reduce, like you and I, individuals and people like you and I, reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions to a target. Now, to achieve anything at all, let alone climate action, or let alone fight against climate action, but to achieve anything at all, I think you need a couple of things. According to me, these are two things, and I would love to hear from all of you. What do you think we need to achieve any goal, to achieve any target? I would love to know what your opinions on this are in the chat box. Determination, very rightly said, Saket. Patience, Vishakha says. Dedication, focus. A plan and will to follow up, absolutely. Plan. Yes, I love your answers. I love some of your answers. And while dedication, motivation is very important, I realize that motivation often doesn't last. You need a framework to keep at, to turn that motivation into something concrete. And so according to me, like a lot of people have said here, you need a plan, you need a clear target in front of you. And the second thing that you need, according to me, is that you need a way to measure the impact. You need a way to measure your contribution and measure how well is that plan actually working. And so that's what we started to, that's what we tried to integrate into Cool the Globe app. The first thing that anybody gets as soon as entering the app is that everyone gets a clear target of reducing their own greenhouse gas emissions. So this month, my target is to reduce my emissions by 30 kg. And so as soon as I have a target in front of me, then I see a plan of how I could achieve it. I see simple actions that I can take in my day-to-day life to achieve that target. Simple things that I can do across different areas. And I can choose the thing that seems most easy to me. So, for example, since it's a lockdown here in Pune, I am working from home. So by not going to my office, which is 10 kilometers away, otherwise I would have gone in a car. I saved 2 kg of greenhouse gas emissions. I could, before it was a lockdown, I was traveling by cycle. So traveling by cycle, I was saving again 2 kg of greenhouse gas emissions. I did not buy 5 pairs of jeans this month, and by doing that, I saved 10 kg of greenhouse gas emissions. I segregated the dry waste in my home, and by doing that, 1 kg of dry waste I segregated, and I saved 2 kg of greenhouse gas emissions. I did not I'm anyway a vegetarian, but if somebody does not eat, say, chicken for a whole month, or if somebody does not eat beef, by not eating chicken, if you don't eat, say, 100 grams of chicken, which is in one plate, you'd save about 2 kg of greenhouse gas emissions. If you don't eat it for a whole month, you'd save almost 10 kg of greenhouse gas emissions. So I saw the impact I was making with simple day-to-day actions, and I was seeing the actual greenhouse gas emissions I was saving by doing that. Now, what a lot of people say is that what difference can one person make? But I think when there are many individuals like us coming together on a common goal, then the collective impact can be extraordinary. And to show the power of that collective impact, we have a global meter on the homepage of the app, which shows the savings made by all app users combined. And so once we released this app, I realized that the real work has only just begun. The real work is in convincing people that in the face of climate change, they can make a difference. And that's how we started talking to amazing people like you. We started making videos about our mission. And those videos were shared by our friends with their friends, and them with some more friends. And before we knew it, millions around the world were watching our videos. Citizens from over 55 countries came together on this platform on a common goal of climate action. And that's how I started receiving messages, emails from so many people, many leaders, policymakers, entrepreneurs reached out. But even more than that, what really mattered more to me was the ordinary people who reached out. So just the other day, a 9-year-old girl emailed me saying that she doesn't have a phone yet, but she still wants to do something about climate change. And she asked me, what can I do in my life? What changes can I make in my life to help fight climate change? And this small girl had realized something that many adults often don't, is that actions matter a lot more than words. On the other spectrum, an 86-year-old woman called me and she said that I'm retired now. I don't get out of my house much, but I still leave the lights open in my house in the afternoon. And I'm going to stop doing that from today. And that would be my contribution to the movement. A 35-year-old man, in his hustle bustle to get to his office every day, he purchased a cycle. He called me up and he said, I purchased a cycle and I've decided to travel on my cycle everywhere. From the app, I can see the actual emissions I save from doing that. It inspires me all the more to keep going. So such simple stories of climate action I hear every single day from ordinary people who get in touch with me. And that's helped me realize that it's us who have the biggest power to help fight climate change. Because when we take actions in our lives, it creates a ripple effect. It creates a wildfire of change on not only the lives of our friends, our relatives, but it also creates a ripple effect for bigger systemic changes in policy and advocacy. But what is really important is for people like you and I to say that we do care about climate change and we want to do something about climate change. And I think that brings me to possibly the most important part of today, which is what can you do to make a difference? So the first thing you can do is like me, you can also take a pledge to reduce your own greenhouse gas emissions by 10%. And you can join Cool the Globe family to do that. I would send the link here on the chat box as well, but you can find the link to Cool the Globe app on Play Store. Just type Cool the Globe. And I would love for you to take a pledge with citizens from all over the world, a pledge to reduce your own emissions by 10%, because real change starts with our own lives. The second thing you can do is help spread the word. We really need more and more enthusiastic people, inspiring people like you to become advocates at Cool the Globe, to help spread the word in your communities, in your circles. Everybody can make a difference in their chosen profession, in their day-to-day lives. And becoming Cool the Globe advocate just means deciding that I'm going to make a difference in my life. And so if you're interested, I would love for you to get in touch with me personally to become a Cool the Globe advocate. The third thing you can do is decide your action. Now in the app, we have over 55 plus customizable climate actions that anyone can take. And I always tell people, decide with an action that is most convenient for you, an action which would give you happiness. I have realized that going on a path of climate action has truly improved my life in all other areas as well. And real sustainability does not limit us, it empowers us. And so decide an action that is most comfortable for you. It also aligns with the other goals in your life. So for example, if your goal is to stay healthy, then you can decide to walk more instead of using your car. If your goal is to be more creative, then you can decide to take a bus and use that time for your creative energy. If your goal is to is anger management, then you can decide some chores at the house. You can wash your clothes by hand instead of using a washing machine, and you can use that time to get better control on your mind. So there's so many simple actions that you can take. Take an action which is most convenient for you, which makes more sense for you, and decide to take that action throughout the next month after this session, because I really hope that this doesn't end as a 45-minute session that has no impact on your life. I really hope that this is a session that in which you decide that you have the power to make a difference, and that difference starts with a small action. And with those words, I'm so happy to meet all of you today. I really enjoyed talking to you. I would love to hear some questions or remarks from all of you. I would put my contact details in the chat box, and I would love to keep talking to you after all of this as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prachi. That was quite an amazing and so engaging, I would say. And you make it sound so simple. So I don't really think why all of us should be just sitting on our backsides waiting for something to happen. And it's so simplistic and easy to do. And I'm sitting here in the university with my team, and we were all having a good laugh at the example that you gave, about washing clothes. If if you want to do something about your anger management, how about using, washing your clothes yourself rather than using the machine? So honestly, that was really nice. So we'll wait for a few questions to come up. I think I can start with asking you one. That yes. Apart from all the appreciation and the pats on the back that you receive from millions of people across the globe, as you said, do you also get trolled by the cynics who say that nothing's going to happen and all this is hogwash, or app se kuch farak nahi padne wala, etc., etc.?
Right. That's a good question, actually, because it does happen sometimes. So just the other day, someone had called me up to say that
question? Sorry.
yes, somebody had called me up to say that I watched your video, and do you know that all this climate change and all is a hoax and it's not actually true? And I'm just calling you to tell you that so you don't really waste more of your time on a cause that's actually not true. So I didn't really know what to say. I think by talking to a person, you can sense how far gone they are, and is it really possible to change their mind about something. But even more than the cynics, I think what's more worrisome are the people who know about climate change, know about how pressing it is, and still find it difficult to take action on it. And I think those are the people I want to focus on more, because there is hope there. Most people understand that climate change is happening and that something needs to be done about it. They just don't know what could be done about it. So I think I would rather focus on that.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't blame you at all. Okay. So Saket says today is World Nature Conservation Day. Any remarks from you to people who aren't very serious about climate change?
I would say I wouldn't really blame people who aren't serious about climate change, because I myself wasn't for a very long time. And I would say it's not the fault of people, because and that's how I like to begin, by asking people what do they care about. And very often we don't understand what matters to us is going to be impacted by climate change. So I have experienced personally that once you humanize climate change for people, once we help them understand that it has to do with our lives, it's originating from our homes and it's happening in our homes. Once people realize that, they want to do something. And once we help them understand what they can do, then they do it. So I really don't think the onus is on people. The onus is on us to help humanize climate change to people.
Thank you. Thank you, Prachi. Wonderful. Well, a very different question. Generally, our education and family culture propels us towards a safe, secure job. How difficult was it to convince your family regarding choosing a non-conventional career like this?
That's a good
question.
Yes. So I was very lucky that it wasn't very difficult for me. But also I have to say that, so in old times, even this is a thought that even I had, that anybody who is working in the social sector is doing so by being absolutely poor, and not is dedicating their entire lives to it, and it's a difficult life to have. And because of this mindset, we don't see a lot of young people getting into social impact. But now the world has really changed. We have a big sector coming up, which is called impact investment. We have people around the world wanting to invest in social project, and we have something called social entrepreneurship. So today you can earn, you can live a normal life, you can live a very fulfilling life, while also working on social impact. So the times have really changed in that aspect. And I would say that as soon as I decided that I wanted to work on something unconventional, I had made that decision a few months before my graduation. And because we had a few months, we also had some time to think about how I could do that while not impacting my income. So I was very certain that I wanted to at least earn the same as my batchmates would, even though I'm working into this, because otherwise, how will I sustain it? How will I grow my team? How will I make it big? And I got together with another one of my batchmates who also wanted to do something on his own, and we started figuring out how could we earn money on our own. And in our college that time, so yours is a management institute, I think some of them are management students, I was a media student, and we had lots of restaurants around us. So we went to a couple of those restaurants. We told them that let us handle your social media. And at that time, since we were still in college, some of them just gave us free food and we agreed to do it for that. And then a few months before graduation, we had a good enough portfolio. And that time we called up, we called up some businesses that we looked up to, social entrepreneurs, sustainability initiatives that we really looked up to. We told them that we have this portfolio and we want to help manage your digital communications. And we called 10 such businesses. 7 of them called us in for a pitch, and the 5 were our first 5 clients. And while Cool the Globe, even before Cool the Globe became what it was, our source of income was sorted. And that really helped convince my parents. Yes, I think I tell this story not only to tell you about how I convinced my parents, but also to tell you that it's very these days it's become very easy to start something of your own, and all you have to do is just call up people are extremely accessible. And if any of you are interested in starting up, opening up a social entrepreneurship, opening up a business, all you have to do is call up the people who inspire you, and that would be your first chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Prachi. And I see a lot of people who are into work like you now. At the end of the day, money is also important, because if you have to sustain going ahead, you do need the pockets and to be warmed up with some money also. So we work quite closely with the Healing Himalayas. I don't know if you've heard of Pradeep Sangwan. He's right now out in the Himalayas cleaning up the garbage. And one day he posted a picture from Rakcham, which is pretty high up, about his cleaning campaign. And the next day there was an avalanche and the bridge broke and there was hell let loose and 9 people from Delhi lost their lives. So I'm just giving you an example of how things are going wrong with all this climate change, because I think in Himachal we fooled around with the nature quite a bit because of this highway coming up. Lots and lots of trees have come up, and of course the NGT has said that you need to plant the same number of trees, but then who cares? I really don't know what's happening. So the road is beautiful, traffic is good, everything is fine, but where are the trees? Is my $1 million question. So we are in for a tough time here. So last 2 questions I'll ask you quickly. I'll combine them and say, according to you, what is the biggest factor we can control to reverse the current climate change? And where do you see India and the climate change down the line 10 years from now? I hope you are optimistic.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So I think Sharad has asked that question. I think where do I see it depends on you and depends on us, how we act now. The global target 10 years from now, 2030, is that we should have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by half. And that's the global target. I see a lot of hope today, and that's because of you. It's because I see people even younger than me coming up. When I was that age, I didn't even know about climate change. Coming up to me, asking about what they could do. I see climate change and sustainability, climate action and sustainability becoming cool. And I that really raises my hope, because I think our generation is doing something that a lot of past generations didn't focus on. We see social impact, and we see sustainability and climate action as one of the focus areas. We see somebody doing that. It's become a cool thing to do. It become a cool thing to care about the environment. It's become a cool thing to care about the people around us. And I think that is one of the reasons why I see so much hope. I also see awareness increasing. I see a lot of initiatives, a lot of corporations committing to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And these are really baby steps, but these are steps. And that really, when I was not doing anything, I'll be honest with you, I did not have hope. I was not very optimistic. But when I started taking actions, I realized that actions act as a honeypot to inspire so many initiatives to take place, actions in act as a honeypot to raise awareness. And so the moment I started taking small actions in my day-to-day life, I saw my own entire perspective change, because every single day I started having conversations with ordinary people who in their own way are doing something. And so that is the reason I'm optimistic. I do think that we will cross this bridge, but we will only be able to do it when ordinary citizens come together.
Yeah, you better answer my husband's question.
Yes. The impact of all actions will be long term, immediate future. Yes. So that's a very good question. I'll read it out again to everybody who's not on the Zoom. Arvinanda sir has asked, the impact of all the actions that you're focusing on will be long term in terms of decades and unlikely to be visible in the immediate future. Is that a challenge? So that's a very key challenge. Not only my actions, but the impact of climate change, the impacts we see now, it started many decades ago. And the greenhouse gas emissions we put into the atmosphere today, they are always going to stay there for a very long time. It's an irreversible problem. And so there's a compounding factor. The impacts of our actions today are going to be seen many years later. And that is a challenge, because so I was reading an article a few years ago, and it said that if there was ever a problem which people did not care about, it would look exactly like climate change, because it seems like this is a problem with no clear villains, with no clear face, which is happening to somebody else at some other place at some other time. And that's the reason people find it difficult to do something about climate change. So while the long impacts will be seen in the long run, I would say feelings are felt today. That is also one of the reasons we try to quantify individual actions in Cool the Globe app, because otherwise you do small things and you think, what is this leading to? After a point, you don't know if it's going to do anything. But when you see the actual emissions you saved with your small actions, that sort of a degree of immediate impact that you can feel and you can see. But even other than that, I like to say that we are counting motivation. How you felt after taking that action, how you felt after doing something towards making a change, that feeling is immediate. I encourage people to take up climate actions that make them happy, because that's what keeps them doing it in the long run. So the real reason we do it, and the real reason I also do it, apart from fighting climate change, is because it truly just makes me happy. It empowers my life in so many different ways. It's improved me as a person, it's developed my personality, it's developed my speaking ability, it's allowed me to speak to people like this, which I never could have imagined. It's in fact made my career better. So when I was in college, we used to have this test called media content review, and we used to study for different awards in advertising that were won by people. One of the awards that I had studied, it had once come in our exam, was the Olive Crown Award won by Sadhguru that year. And this year it was given to Cool the Globe for communicating sustainability.
Wow.
I could have never imagined reaching a level like this just a few years after my graduation. I have truly seen that my life in all areas has truly improved because of climate action. So the actions I take today, their impact will be seen many years ago, many years later. But how I feel after taking those actions, that is immediate.
Thank you, Prachi. That was such a wonderful answer, and congratulations for the award. And honestly, it's been such a lovely session just hearing you talk. And as I said earlier also, you make it sound so simple. So why isn't everyone doing their little bit to cool the globe? I don't understand. But I am myself quite particular about small things in life. And in fact, the whole day and the household also, I'm like telling everyone to turn down the pressure of the, the water that's being used, or switch off the lights when they move. Little things. But yes, I promise that we'll do some more also. And as I said, I've downloaded your app, but then start using it so that I know that I'm making a difference. So really, really wonderful talking to you. And thank you so much for being here and telling us all that you've been doing. That's what I was telling the kids. I said, when you listen to Prachi, she'll sound like just one of you. You're so young and maybe just a couple of years older than the kids who are listening to you. So very inspirational, a true guru talk, I would say. Thank you. And definitely we'll be in touch to find out what we can do and how we can do things better. Thank you so much, Prachi.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for calling me here. I really enjoy talking to everyone. And I would love, if anybody wants to talk to me after this, I would love to interact one-on-one as well.
Sure. I will share your details. It's already there, and in your Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, everything I can see over there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye. Take care.